Hello, I'm Doug McWhorter. This is Journey to Positive Choices. Today I want to talk to you about you can get through this. This is the holiday season, and a lot of times during this part of the year, there's things that go on in our lives. There's things that have happened in our past that we sit and we think about. There's a lot of struggles sometimes financially. There's struggles with our families. There's struggles with our jobs. And, I'll be honest, I know that all too well. But you know what? God can get us through this. What is it that you worry about? Do you let worrying just kind of consume your life? Sometimes we as humans, we worry, we just sit and think about it all the time. And it ends up causing depression in our lives. It ends up causing an illness in our life because we stress and we worry. What mess are you in? Can God get me out of this mess? A verse that always comes to my mind when I'm thinking about stress, I'm thinking about the things of life that I worry about. It says in Philippians 4:13, it says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And if we have Jesus Christ in our life, we can conquer anything. There's nothing that we cannot do. Now, is it on our time or is it on God's time? It's on God's time. And that's kind of what I want to talk to you about today. I want to talk to you about the story of Joseph. Joseph was the favored child of Jacob. Jacob made him a coat of many colors. And Joseph was very special. He was the child in Jacob and Rachel's life that they gave everything to. And in Genesis 37 through 50, it tells the story of Joseph. And he had brothers, and they were very, very jealous of Joseph because Jacob would send the boys out to the field to work, but Joseph got to stay and play. And if there was a special gift or a special blessing that Jacob was going to give, he always gave it to Joseph. And Joseph was 17 years old when this mess or this worry that came upon him started. And they were out in the field, and they were pretty far from home, and Joseph had went with them because the brothers had plotted to get him out into the field where they were at. And there was a deep well that they knew was there. And so they took Joseph and they took his coat and they took it off of him. And they tied his hands and they tied his feet and they threw him down into this well. Now, the well, you got to think about that. It's not just a well with water. It didn't have water in it. And so as he was falling, his hands were tied, his ankles were tied, and I'm sure there were some roots and some sharp rocks and things that he was hitting on the way down. His brothers hated him. His brothers despised him. And, Joseph was he was stripped naked of his tunic and his coat and everything that he had, and when they threw him down in the bottom of this cistern. And they were going to cover it up because they were going to let him die. And they took his coat and they put some blood on it and they ripped it up like a wild beast had killed him. But then there were some people that come along that were buying slaves, and they bought Joseph from the brothers. And Joseph was sold into slavery. And he was in prison. And Joseph, he never abandoned God through this whole deal. He never gave up. His heart never hardened during this whole time. God was with him. God was helping him through these hard times that he was going through. He was in Egypt, and an Egyptian official had promoted Joseph to the chief servant. He was also promoted by the prison warden and placed over the inmates that were in prison. And so he was actually working in the palace as a prisoner. And then Pharaoh found Joseph and found favor with him because Joseph, relied on God, and he talked about Pharaoh's dreams and things that were going on in Egypt. And Pharaoh promoted Joseph to be the prime minister of Egypt. By the end of Joseph's life, he was the second most powerful man of his generation, because he never gave up on God. He didn't let his worries consume him. He didn't just think about and harbor the mess that he was in, that his brothers put him in, or the slavery that he went into, or the prison that he went into, or his life was just worthless. He always praised God, and he thanked God for everything that he had. I think about it, his torn coat that the brothers took off and tore up actually turned into a royal robe. The pit that they threw him in became a palace that he lived in. The broken family, they ended up growing together. The evil that Satan intended to harm Joseph with, God used that evil to strengthen him. God overcame all the things that Satan and that the world was throwing at Joseph. And the reason he did is because Joseph never gave up. He always looked to God. Recovering from a mess, or recovering from something that happens, recovering from someone in your family that hurts you, that says things that they shouldn't say, all of these things, they're not painless. But God does promise us to grow. And he promises to strengthen and use that pain for a higher purpose. Some of the things that we go through, some of the pain that we endure in our lives, God uses that to help us grow closer to him, help us to grow stronger, helps to strengthen our faith in him. Recovery's never promised to be quick. A lot of times, just think about it, if you go in and you have surgery on something, or you break your arm, or you break your leg or something, recovery isn't instant. It doesn't, boop, overnight you're healed. No, it takes a little time. And recovery from things that hurt us are not quick. Joseph was 17 when he was thrown in the pit. He was at least 37 when he saw his brothers again, because there was a famine that came out across Egypt. And his brothers and his dad and their family, they were starving. And Joseph was the prime minister, and he was over all of the goods for Egypt. And he saw his brothers. And you know what? God said, hey, take care of them. And he did. You know, it took another couple of years after Joseph had saw his brothers and they had given some food. It took a couple of years for him to see his father again. You know, we always wonder, why is it taking so long? Why is God not answering my prayer right now? You know, and I always have to remind myself that it's not on my timing. It's always on God's timing for Him to do something in your life. You know, God will always use the mess that we're in for good. You know, we see a mess, we see trouble, we see just the hurt and stuff that we're in, but God sees a perfect chance to train us, to test us, and to teach us, to help us grow. When we truly rely on God to get us through the mess, we represent and challenge Satan's plan. When we look to God and He helps us through it, we are turning around and challenging what Satan is trying to do to us. You know, God tells us in Isaiah 43:2, it says, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And through the rivers, they shall not overflow you. When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, nor shall the flames scorch you. What God is telling us is, if we walk with Him, He is going to take care of us, and He is going to protect us. He is going to help us become and be a godly influence to all those around us. And I think in today's society, in today's world, all the ungodly things that are going on around us, we need God's influence in our lives more now than we ever have. And it's something that the world needs right now, is for people to allow God to work through them, and for God to use them and influence the world in the right way. We as Christians should make it a priority to stand up for God, no matter what the situation. We should spread God's love. We should spread God's wisdom. We should spread His kindness, and we should spread His mercy. You know, I've said it time and time again, and I'm going to continue to say it, that we have got to bring God back into this country, into our government. Not just from the federal side, but our state. We need to bring God back in to lead our country, to lead our state, to lead our cities. We need to bring God back into the schools. Everybody's always like, well, what's wrong? What's wrong with this school? What's wrong with that school? Well, I'll tell you what's wrong. We took God out of the picture, and we need to put him back in. If you want our schools and our government to be right for all of us, we've got to put God back in there. Satan has come to kill, he has come to steal, and he has come to destroy our lives. But thank goodness that we have a God that is stronger and he is mightier than Satan. And he can overcome and he can defeat Satan's lies and Satan's tricks. All we have to do is stand strong and totally trust in God and let him lead our lives. We have to believe in God's word. We have to study God's word. We have to be in prayer with God all the time. We have to look to him for guidance. We have to look to him for our knowledge. We have to look to him to show us what's right and what's wrong. We are to be a witness for him all the time. And when we do these things, we're letting God help us to have victory over Satan and what Satan wants to destroy. All it takes is one mess, and for you to stray away from God, and Satan will come into your life and try to take you away from what God has for you. But let's be like Joseph. And no matter what Satan throws at us, we stand up to him. And we say, no, Satan. I'm going to stand with God. I'm going to let God get me through everything that's going on in my life. That's my prayer for you today. That you will stand strong and you will stand beside God and let him into your life and let him guide you every day. You can write to us at www.journeytopositivechoices.com. We'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to be a part of this program and help sponsor the program or just donate to the program, there's a QR code that you're going to see that you can scan, or you can go to that website, journeytopositivechoices.com, and there's a place for you to do that. Thank you, and I look forward to when we get together again.